Okay, this game can soft lock in the most surprising of ways. As you can see, new soft lock is discovered every day. Alright. Start. Alright, so unfortunately I'm going to have to refight the raptors, which will take a little while, but shouldn't be that big of an issue. I had pretty decent RNG there, so if I can go really slow, granted that I'm trying to take a safer route towards it, but the RNG gods will bless me. I believe in it. It's marathon luck. So it's kind of helpful to set the dog up here, because you can get you have the chance of getting a early hit with both characters, which will do twice as much damage, but it doesn't happen too often. The boy's AI is much quicker than the dog in general, just about everywhere. The dog is really slow at reacting and moving, but the dog, when you're the boy and the dog is set to aggressive, so if I were to do it in the opposite, the dog would most likely get hit every single time. Although he does have the chance of attacking as well, sometimes in a good pattern. What I'm trying to do is basically just avoid their hitbox, which is actually surprisingly small, and trigger them to attack me, so I can hit them to the side, hopefully to the right, so they go to the bottom right bush. So I'm getting a little bit of bad luck here. As I said earlier, the raptors have an extremely high evasion rate, so they will tend to dodge quite often. But that's fine. Oh, that's... You can also hit them while they're entering the bush there. So sometimes it doesn't work, but when it does, it's pretty sweet. But then that can also cause the chance of them either spawning out really fast or really slow, which is much more likely to happen. So dog died. It's a little unfortunate, and he would have just gained health there, but it's fine. It's obscuring my view a little bit, but not that big of a deal. Oof, that was a little scary. Alright, so that wasn't too bad. Much slower than the first one, but it's fine. So hopefully this time around, game will not soft lock. Still really can't believe that actually happened. Yep. So that's what's supposed to happen. And since we bought the inn, we'll be able to save as well. Now what I'm going to do is just grab some clay here and some talons so I can get on the money route for the ingredient route rather. So I can buy a few hard balls to defeat some bad guys here and there. Now there's a few ways you can go about collecting your clay in all bosses, but I'm gonna choose to just go with this pattern here. Kill that flower and then grab the clay in the bottom, the start of that screen. Also, what I did to skip the guard there is a trick called AI leashing, where if you put an input on the dog and then switch characters, the dog has the chance of following through with that input or the direction. Here we have to buy an item from this guy, and he gives us the chance of getting, or he will give us a jaguar ring, which gives us the ability to run. So since I picked up those 30 talons, I don't need to sell the petal that I normally would have to buy the rest of the clay and crystals. And I do this because the petal gives us 40 healing or 40 health. So for marathon safety, take the additional healing items. Right here, we can manipulate. There's some crystals there, and we can manipulate them from being 2 to 3 by pretending to loot it with the dog, and it doesn't actually loot it, and then looting it with the boy. That also causes the clay on the right side to go from 2 to 3 as well. This guy is going to give us our first alchemy spell, Hardball, which we're going to use to kill pretty much all the Act 1 bosses. We're going to take a save, grab the clay. Oops. So there's some crystals there that we need. And also a clay here we can grab. And coming up in a second here, kind of like the AI leashing, there's a trick to get over these bridges that would normally otherwise collapse on us, but we can attack with the dog to get onto the trigger, switch to the boy, and then switch back to the dog really quickly, and the bridge won't collapse. We can just pass through that whole maze. Here we're going to menu while the dog is far off screen. We need to keep the boy on aggressive and the dog on search. And since the dog is far enough off screen, it allows us to despawn the maggot or move through his hitbox. Because when an enemy is far away enough, we can do that, because it's Evermore. Here I'm going to set up a trick called Thrax Intro Skip, which is performed by keeping the boy in the trigger to exit through the left side, and then putting the dog in the trigger to enter Thrax's chambers. So it'll move us to the left there, and then we can jump over the trigger for the intro. So we're gonna just pummel Thrax with a bunch of hardballs. And there's a trick that you can do called Thrax Outro Skip by combining the outro animation with the intro animation, which allows us to move around while he's exploding here and free Stoneheart early. But I'm going to opt out of doing that trick because I had the dog in a really weird position, and if you do it too early, it'll cause Thrax to the hardball damage to Thrax's heart to not register, and basically just mess you up and you'd have to start over. So didn't feel like risking it. The timing can be a little strange on it. So now we have Stoneheart freed, and the whole town will be thankful, so we can return to the town now. There's a crystal there that we're going to grab. and additionally another crystal here that we're going to grab. We want to grab as many crystals as possible because crystals are far more expensive than clay. And this guy right here gives us a spell called Acid Rain, which is a really cool spell, but fortunately it's absolutely useless in the speedrun, so we're just gonna close that menu right there and buy a lot of crystals. We're gonna save our progress and see you later. So there's another 2 clay here that we're gonna grab because it's quick and convenient, as well as another clay there on the ground, and continue to make our way to the town. Normally, when you enter Fire Eyes' hut after defeating Thrax, they have to like summon her or whatever. But since we chose to skip the guard and just exit out of the town, we can put the dog into the trigger for talking to the guard, and then walk into these rooms like that, and the game decides, oh yeah, so you can just enter the top of Fire Eyes' hut, no problem. So we start the conversation off with Fire Eyes here. We're basically explaining how we want to get back to Podunk, and she's like, "You're from Podunk? I'm from Podunk too." Don't really know how to get back there though. But I'll give you some I'll give you some call beads, which will be extremely useful throughout the run. And you'll see in a second here. So she shows off her abilities to start fire and go invisible really quickly. Everything likes to explode in this game as well, so it causes a massive explosion. And here we're gonna go talk to this guy that's just chilling in the woods, grab some ingredients, and he's gonna give us defend, which is extremely useful later on. You'll see later in Act 2. And we can switch to the dog immediately after closing that screen to transition real quick. So we don't want to get grabbed by these plants. We can despawn or walk through that plant as well, like we did earlier with the maggot. Some more clay here that we're going to grab. So, prehistoric eras, there's just clay and crystal sitting all over the place. And this is the Viper Commander, or I like to call him the Cobra Commander. And we're going to use hardballs and heatwave. And while this animation's going on, we can loot some ingredients that are on the ground. Fortunately, these guys did not die, which happens sometimes. That's fine though. And the dog is not doing his job, but it's not that big of a deal. So you can get low damage rolls on those guys there, which unfortunately won't kill them all, but they're usually just about one hit from that point on. This guy is gonna be like, oh yeah, so you know Fire Eyes? Cool, so I'll let you pass. And I'll give you a spell to heal yourself, but yeah, we don't need that. So we'll close the box out, just like we did with the Acid Rain guy. And now we're on the volcano part, which is one of the scariest parts of the run. We do not want the dog to be too far because, excuse me, we need him to follow us in order to climb up the volcano or take these, I guess they're kind of like, I don't even know what to call them. steam vents. And yeah, the OST is done by Jeremy Soule, who does the soundtracks for Elder Scrolls. This was his first major project. It's an amazing soundtrack. This guy is chilling on the top of the volcano. He gives us a spell called Levitate, which we do need later on in the run. I wanted to save. Whoops. Now we're gonna make our way over to Salabog, who is a giant snake, and he's very mean and angry. This guy can be quite a pain, especially if you're playing the game casually. He is probably the most difficult boss in the game. And we're basically going to just pummel him with a ton of hardballs, which is why a big reason why we're trying to stockpile as much as possible. There's also a lot of angry frippopotamuses, or frippos, which makes this area very scary. We're gonna heal for safety purposes. And killing that frippo there causes the bridge 2 to show, which normally you'd have to like navigate all the way around the swamp, but we can just cast a bunch of hardballs on him, kill him. So yeah, this is Salabog. We're gonna hope that we don't take very much damage and try to get as many 2 casts. Two casts of 8 as possible. He can be quite nerve-wracking, honestly. But that's why we take all the extra pedals, because we want it to go as smooth as possible. That's not good. Should hopefully still work though. If they get high damage rolls, he should die anyways. But alright, yeah, so this is bad. Essentially, you do not want to waste any casts on the Wisps of Willow. So at this point, it might just be better to reset, which is what I'm going to do. Which will cost me a little bit, but it should be fine. Whenever you cast another spell, so in that case the pedal, it'll mess up your inventory casts. So when you go to menu towards casting back on Salabog, it'll actually put you onto the Wisps instead of Salabog. So it's important to just pay note to that. unfortunate, but should be fine. I don't know what hit the dog there. You can kill that Frippo in 3 casts technically, but it's a little risky because if you don't, then you'll end up losing your hardballs, and it'll also push him off screen. So you'd have to leave the screen, re-enter. Also, the reason I'm opening up the menu and closing it after the hardballs hit him is it causes a sequence break to happen. Which allows me to cast additional casts without him going back into the water. So I can get 2 8 casts rather than just 1. So now I'm gonna have to switch back to him. So about it takes about 7, I think it's 7 or 8 casts of hardball to kill him. Oops. And this is the first instance of meeting Blimp, who we will see later on in the run. And he gives us the mud pepper, which is what we need to cast levitate. And ultimately you would, in the normal storyline, we'd be using the mud pepper to get that rock levitated right before we entered the room with the Cobra Commander or Viper Commander. And you would have to go through a series of kind of like a maze to get through to navigate through the rest of the volcano and get to the next boss. But we can use the ability to despawn or walk through the rock like we did earlier with the maggot and the plant. So we're gonna do that. Save the mud pepper because we do need it later on in the run. Since this is all bosses, we have to fight Tiny, or basically it's Tiny's like little minion guys, which normally otherwise we would just skip. So we'll set the dog far off here on the screen. Where is the clay? There it is. Okay, the dog ran back up. So if the dog is far enough off screen, we can just skip right through the rock. There's a call bead there we're gonna grab for the next boss, Magmar, who in a normal any percent run, he's one of the biggest pains of this whole act. But in all bosses, he's actually free. Since your hardball is so highly leveled, it's actually not a problem killing him at all. I don't think it's even possible to have rolls low enough to the point where it wouldn't kill him. I could be wrong though. And there's a glitch here that was considered task only for a while that allows you to skip that little animation. Oops. Or rather, while the animation was happening, you would walk into the screen transition, and then you would walk onto the platform because you can kind of move around while the screen is transitioning. And it allows you to skip or combine the animation of you moving from screen to screen and the screen scrolling to the left to show that the gate is being opened. And we ended up finding a RTA setup, which saves like a second, but we're gonna take the save because the raptor there is, or viper is friendly. So Magmar has a few places to spawn. Unfortunately, he gave us the bad one, but it's not a big deal at all. So the reason we're able to do heat wave or a thunderstorm while we're casting hardballs is because both heat wave and lightning storm are animation spells, whereas hardball is not. So we can cast an additional 8. You want me to count the hardballs? I can do that. Fun fact, this game came out in, I believe, 96 or 94 or something like that. And Pokemon came out like the year later. So Magmar here is actually the OG Magmar. So the Evil Fire Eyes blows up the volcano, and we go flying in the air, 100 feet in the air, and conveniently land on this giant half a walnut and fall off of a waterfall. Which we then arrive safely ashore on the beach in Act 2. And this is a Squaresoft game, yes. It was technically a sequel to Secret of Mana while having no ties to Secret of Mana at all. So in this screen, or in all screens really, the dog is actually present, even though he's not a part of our party. But in this screen, we can bring him into our party by being on the trigger to enter that the doorway and doing a frame perfect character input on the so that's really unfortunate. While we're switching, so the reason we do that is because we want to bring the boy over, but unfortunately the boy went up left, which causes the boy to there's one of two things that can happen. You can get good subpixels and be able to walk upright and not fall into the ditch, or you can get unlucky and fall into the ditch anyways. But ultimately you want him to just go walk straight. So the reason that we would do that is because we want to start the cutscene while we are in Nobilia already, which activates the market timer. And while the market timer is active, the only things that really slow down the timer are menus, screen transitions, and there's something else. Oh yeah, text boxes that have choices. So the desert in this game is actually really weird. It's basically one whole screen, and I believe how it happened is the developers left in a way to cross the desert fast, which fortunately enough for us lets us zip all the way pixie dust. That's 4. I could have bought an extra one, but that's fine. Which allows us to zip all the way across the desert. And we can do the same thing on the way back as well. And the reason we buy pixie dust there is for a major glitch that's about to happen, which we use to combine with the Atlas that we just picked up, the spell, and along with defend, which we'll hopefully see in a second here. So I didn't need to fall in the ditch, but it doesn't really actually matter because I need to save anyways. So that's normally where you would fall into the ditch if you get the blimp skip, which of course would have been ideal. And now here we're gonna basically try to get poisoned and take a status ailment from the monk. He has the chance of giving us Confound or Plague, and both will work. Confound is of course ideal, but Plague works just as well. And what happens when you're poisoned is it rolls back your stats, but when you activate Atlas and or Defend, but Atlas mainly, because I believe Defend can work without the status ailment of the monk, but I'm not 100% positive on that. Or it's Atlas can, either or. No, I'm pretty sure it's actually Defend needs the status element of the monk. But when your stats are rolled back really, really high, and you die with the pixie dust, it causes the game to save the status of your rolled back stats, which allows you to be really, really strong throughout the run. So this is really close. I don't have much time to die because the poison will run out eventually. We want to do this we want to die as close to a poison tick as possible. All right, so yeah, that's not good. If you die within so if you get poisoned or take poison damage and you die shortly within that time frame, what will happen is your stats will become extremely high, and eventually you'll level up too much to the point where you'll overflow your stats and you won't be able to cause any damage at all, which ideally you don't want to happen. Unfortunately, in all bosses, this can be a little bit more tricky due to the fact that your level is much higher, so your evasion rate is increased. Okay, so this is really good. My menu is a little messed up. This Plague might actually help me out a bit here by causing some additional damage to us. Alright, so that should be perfect. We'll just check our stats, make sure everything is fine. So this is perfect. 125 is, like, it doesn't really get much better than that. It's probably about to take a poison damage, like any second there, basically. And the reason we're doing this all now is because the market timer is going on, and we need to wait for that to finish so that we can progress with the story. So now, basically, we're invincible. We can cause a lot of damage, and our hitbox is so minuscule that almost nothing can hurt us. The only time, which is a lot in this case, apparently, that we won't hit for 999 damage is if we miss or if we get a critical hit, which will give us a roll lower than 999, anything between 1 and 998. So for the rest of the run, I want to hope that we do not crit or miss at all, if possible. And we're going to use this time to grind out a bit so we can get some additional levels for hit percentage increase, as well as giving us the jewels, because it's not talons anymore. The currency we use now is jewels, so that we can buy additional ingredients for crush. Man, I'm getting a lot of misses. Yeah, that's basically. We need to get another amulet of annihilation for later on in the run. You can. The amulet of annihilation is required in Act 3 for story progression, and you can technically get it when you spawn into that area, but it causes you to not really backtrack, but have to navigate all the way up, and you have to go basically to the other side of town, and it wastes a lot of time. So it's ideal that you buy it here before you leave Nobilia. I think it's also cheaper, actually, if you do so as well. Everything has a tendency to increase in price in this game, as you'll certainly notice if you play it casually. Things also reward more, but I want to say it's ultimately harder to get gold, which is, I think gold is the currency in Act 3. But things also become, in my opinion, things become progressively easier as you're a lot stronger and all your inventory is much more powerful, and the spells play a huge role. I feel like most people, without having any prior knowledge, or even if they're just playing for fun, when playing the game casually, have a tendency to just go with using mostly physical damage. But the spells can certainly help you out a lot, especially the buffer spells and healing. So there is a small chance that these guys drop the prizes, which in some places can be really, really unfortunate, where it will block our path and we have to pick it up and wait for it to despawn. But there's also the chance that they can drop a prize on the screen below with the monk and the thugs. And if they drop a prize next to an item, and this is actually true for pretty much anywhere, there's an ingredient or a chest on the ground or in the map. If they drop basically a currency that has whatever value, so X value, and you pick that up and loot the ingredient or the chest at the same time, it'll give you that amount of ingredient or whatever per se the item is. So if there's call beads, you'll get X amount of call beads instead of just getting the amount that it gives you normally. So ideally you want to have them right over here, which would be limestone. or in the bottom left up top there, which is also vinegar, which can allow you to take a sting route, which would be slightly faster. Oh, and give us nectar. And then it'll give you 75 limestone or 75 wax. Right here we're going to cause a little manipulation of the ingredient path, so we can get a few additional pickups. Then we're going to buy some ingredients from our good old buddy Blimp that we helped rescue earlier in Act 1. We don't want to save because it doesn't really do anything for us at this point. We're already invincible. The only thing that could possibly go wrong is a soft lock, which in Evermore unfortunately happens quite often, but since we're aware of what causes soft locks, we will do our best to avoid all of that. So we're going to buy the Amulet of Annihilation here. Now we have a bit of time to kill. We gotta wait until the market timer ends to progress, unfortunately. There has been a bit of experimenting. Crazy speaker thing. Which crazy speaker thing do you mean? Should always taunt the chickens. I agree. Oh, the basket case. I could, if you want me to. It would cause a little bit of additional time loss, which don't really particularly want to do, especially due to what happened earlier. So yeah, if you taunt the chicken 100 times, he annihilates you. Oh my goodness, I forgot about that. So, fun fact, I've actually done that before, by accident. That can definitely happen. So don't stand too far up when you do that. Oh yes. Lobotomy chicken, lobotomy chicken. So, yeah, there's been a bit of experimenting with the market timer, and in certain cases, we're not sure exactly what it is, but some things will cause the timer to gain time, and other things will cause the timer to cut a bit of time off. Unfortunately, there's not enough information as to what exactly does. But hopefully in the future we'll figure out how to skip the market timer. It makes setting up for the Atlas glitch a little bit more difficult, I suppose, but it would be a pretty generous and awesome time save. I think it has to. I mean, I'm just going off with what I think, but it seems like it has something to do with the text boxes. Yeah, text boxes tend to add a frame or two of lag. I feel like maybe there's a way in which the lag causes the time to go down. I don't know what it is, cause through timing it, I've noticed that there's been times where like it would cut off like a few seconds, and then there was times where it would add a few seconds. So I really have no idea why it happens though. Lasagna is the best, especially tasty beef lasagna. So basically what happens after, I would sing the lobotomy chicken song, but I don't know if I could do it justice personally. I wouldn't want to disappoint Meta Sigma. Chicken parm. Not without paying Meta royalties, exactly. That is a price I cannot afford at the moment, unfortunately. A voice of gold. Hi, I'm Ron Barr. Sometimes I like to believe that I could be a announcer guy, or like a maybe a radio personality. So what happens here is I'm waiting out the market timer. You'll know the market timer is over because the game will freeze for a second, and the sound will, so right there, the sound will change. And the reason we do that is because there's this giant meeting here. And this guy has our dog. A lot of people like to kidnap our dog for whatever reason. And with this, our dog joins our party again, and we get summoned to fight the next boss, since we are the chosen one. So, you know, the chosen one has to put himself on the line. I guess I haven't really proven my worth yet. Yeah. Also, this game has cutscene RNG. So there's basically 3 ways that can go. You can either enter the screen all the way in the top right, or yeah, top right, and you'll always have the same path, which causes you to go down a little bit, and then the screen scrolls right a little. He can go down low like he did there, which is the slowest, only by a few seconds though, and it causes the screen to have to scroll all the way up, and the boy had to walk down and catch up. There is so this next and then the last cutscene RNG is the boy will just walk right, which is the fastest, and then the screen scrolls up a little bit. So this boss does have soft lock potential. If you mess up the fight and Vigor runs around, there's the chance you can hit him on a bad frame, which will cause the game to go berserk and have a horrible audio sound and basically die. But that's not gonna happen because we got a good setup. So what we do here to kill this guy is run behind him, slap him. So setup is a little bit weird with the spear, because you move a lot faster. But what you want to do essentially is you want to run all the way up behind him, and you have to be hugging the wall. If you walk down from the wall, then you'll... Or that was actually a crit, I guess, because I hit him for 4 damage. I don't know. My setup might have been bad. But if you don't hug the wall there, then you will just hit him like normal. And it'll cause him to basically just fly down, and you have to attack him again. So the guy basically sets you loose, and we have to make our way over to the runes and the pyramid, which are 2 of the hardest sections in the game, especially due now to some new tech that was discovered, which causes these skips that we normally do to be a little bit more RNG, but not really that big of a deal. So unlike reverse desert skip like we did earlier, we don't have to actually get it with the boy. We can keep the dog up on the top there, and then once we reach that point, we can just switch to the dog and run up, and yeah, for some reason it scrolls you into the next screen. So this is really bad, actually. Dog is plagued, which means he will die, and that can lose us quite a bit of time here in the runes. But hopefully we can get there fast enough that it shouldn't be that big of a problem. You really don't want the dog to die. Ideally, want to set the dog up so that he can help you transition a few screens a little bit faster. And he died. Oh well. Yeah. So normally what you would do there is keep the dog on that, or right about there, so that he can transition real quick for you. But fortunately, since he's dead, we can't cause him to sniff. So you have to kind of just navigate yourself around by yourself. And here, what you want to do is run around and activate these platforms, which allows us to 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess I have to wait this out now, unfortunately. I'm not really sure how it would work. So that you can transition into that room immediately, as well as that room right there. I think the dog comes back to life here, but I'm not positive. Yeah, he does. All right. So it wasn't too bad. We have to grab an additional wings. Also, casting Crush for the next boss coming up after this. And that would be one of the RNG skips. You want to have the boy... man, this is not going so well. You want to have the boy not walk onto the platform. Or additionally, you could just leash him over like that. It really all depends on whether or not there's enemies on the screen or not. Since the boy is left on aggressive AI, he will walk all over the place. Then you can just wings out after hitting the platform. And this is the new tech. Normally what we used to do is, instead of well, just fall off of the platform or the bridge, but you can set the dog up right next to the door, and if you are lucky, you'll be able to leash the boy across the bridge, which will allow you to, instead of having to use another wings, you can just leave the screen and then re-enter. And the reason you have to re-enter there is because if you don't, then the game will it'll get a weird audio glitch, which will cause it a soft lock. So there's 2 wings that we can grab in the pyramid, so it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, unfortunately Doggo is really weak. So this is Megator. He's invisible, but we know where he is, so we can just kill him really fast like that. And the ruins is over. Now we're gonna work our way towards pyramids, which can be a little bit difficult. There's a few execution heavy glitches that save a little bit of time, but not too much. Also, falling off of those bridges, normally what you would do is acquire a spell. I think it's called Flash, and Flash allows you to uncover things that are invisible. I don't know if it has any role outside of the invisible bridges, but it might. And normally you wouldn't, I guess, if you wouldn't know, or you're not supposed to know anyways, where to go on those bridges, and you would have to fall off the bridge, and then you to Horus, who is the Flash spell. So it's easier to just know where you're going and not have to acquire that. In a 100% run, you have to get the Flash spell, because you also speak with Madronius, which allows you to pick up another spell. So the reason we set the dog there next to the platform instead of on top of the platform is because it allows us to combine those two the sequences, whereas normally you would have to wait for the screen to transition over to the boy and then we go back to the dog. But since we combined them, we can actually just be the boy as the active character by hitting select. And you can sequence break that fanfare as well by selecting twice and switching back to the boy. This guy can give you some trolley patterns sometimes. So since the boy is on aggressive AI, he has a chance of being able to walk over those platforms, which normally when you go over it, it collapses and you have to wait for the dog to walk over as well. There's a lot of sniffs on that screen. Sometimes the sniffs can follow you, and if a ton of them spawn, then it'll cause quite a bit of lag. But and this boss is Rimzala. Normally you have to wait for him to come down like this, and then he'll like let his eye off or whatever. And what that does is it causes him to run all over the place, and it's really big pain, because you can't really do much other than hope that he doesn't run away from you too badly, but it makes it really difficult to hit him. So in all bosses, normally what we would do in an any percent run is skip this cutscene by waiting for an enemy to be on screen, since we use the boy now, or hoping an enemy is on screen. And we would skip over this cutscene because it saves quite a bit in the 90% run. But because this is all bosses, we actually have to fight this guy, as well as the little mini fight afterwards, since it's technically a boss, or a mini boss, since you get the boss music. That was strange. I swung without swinging. Haven't seen that before. So he stole the diamond eyes from us, so we're gonna have to go get him back. He tricked us into thinking it was Horus, which, for some reason, I guess we think he's Horus, even though we never met Horus yet. Yes, he stole. So we're gonna navigate our way back to Nobilia. Conveniently, we can just cross the desert with ease by going into that rock and becoming invisible. So this guy uses the diamond eyes for some evil purpose of creating this boss, Aegis here. Which, thinking about the storyline, it doesn't really make sense because Tiny has the diamond eyes, but I guess, you know, they're just that powerful that he can use them on the boss and then still have them. So we just run up and kill him. So normally in the fight there's bridges, but instead of, and the bridges will explode if you try to cross them, but instead of just standing there and waiting, we can use the dog to combine, so activating the bridge to explode while the fanfare is going off, and it allows us to move the dog around while the cutscene is started. And the dog walks really, really slow. So we position the dog all the way to the top of the screen, so that way in the end, and the cutscene ends, he doesn't have to spend all that time walking up slowly for the screen to transition, and then we can just go. In all, I guess even in Act 1, the game, in all of the games, the dog is much slower than the boy, so you kind of want to have the dog positioned to where he's going to go as often as possible. Unless if you're running with the dog in Act 1. So yeah, the screen fades out. Saves us like about 2 seconds. That was discovered by buddy Green Ambler, I think about like a year ago now or so. So Horus comes and summons Tiny to throw the pyramid because it's gonna explode. And Madronius comes out of nowhere and tells us that where the pyramid exploded, there's a new entrance to a place in Evermore, which might be our answer to finding our way back to Podunk. Which we just so happen to be trying to do. So we're gonna make our way over there into one of the best parts of the game, or personally my favorite part of the game, especially casually. The reason we fall off that time is because it positions us much closer to this entrance or the exit per se, than having to run all the way around and go across the bridge and then come back up. How did he get here in the first place? So, alright, first off, I'm in Aquagoth's lair, and it's basically a maze that you have to navigate through these portals. We want to keep the dog as close as possible, because as I had just said previously, he walks much slower than the boy. The reason that we are here in Evermore is because the dog wandered off after we were just peacefully watching a movie into a mad scientist's lab, conveniently. And the scientist, or the experiment, ended up turning the dog into something crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is Aquagoth. He's horrible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We want to cast 7 crush spells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instead of 8. Because if you don't, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He has the chance to cast a spell as well, or an animation spell. This is unfortunate. Also, this little gremlin dude has the chance of spawning, which produces a bit of lag, but it's no big deal. So yeah, if he if he casts an animation spell while we're using Crush, which is also an animation spell, and we were to cast 8, it would have 9 animation spells on the in play at once, which would cause the game to soft lock. So yeah, the dog runs into the laboratory, and Carltron, who is the mad scientist's robot or assistant, ends up trying to get rid of you. So he puts you into this room that has these evil robot guys, and you end up in a escape pod that the dog happens to be in as well. And when you take the escape pod, you blast off into Evermore. How, I don't really know, to be honest, but yeah. Now your mission is to navigate your way back to Podunk. And this is Act 3, so the dog is a poodle now, because it's medieval in times, and you know, dogs like to become, or in medieval times everybody had a poodle, I guess. I don't really know too much about that, actually. I figured he would be more of a sheepdog, but I guess not. But with the transition of all the time periods or the different acts throughout Evermore, the dog transforms with whatever the time is appropriately. And what happened just there, the reason I ran behind the guy here to start the conversation, is there would be normally a little cutscene that would happen, but you can skip that cutscene by running behind him and initiating the conversation and avoiding the trigger for the cutscene, which saves a few seconds. I want a toaster dog plushie as well. I do not know where to get one though, but if you find out, please let me know. So we're in the freak show, and oh, who could this be? It's a pig dog, and he's running off yet again. And conveniently, after your dog got stolen or kidnapped rather, and turned into a pig, he runs off, and there just happens to run off actually as a pig race is starting. So, you know, he likes to run all over the place. I believe there's RNG involved there, but I'm not 100% sure. I think he can run left a little bit, but it's not too much slower. So yeah, he's racing the pigs. He's really just running all over the place like madman. And since everybody's convinced that he's a pig, he is now the winner. They're like, whose pig is this? I guess that would be me. Sir, I would love to invite you to meet the queen, or the queen would love to meet you. Sweet. So it's convenient for us because we have some questions to answer. And this guy just happens to be really mad because, you know, he bet his whole paycheck on Shuffle Trouble because it's definitely the crowd favorite. And there would be normally a very massive cutscene which would require us to navigate the dog. I was about to say pig. It would require us to navigate the dog in the underground. I guess it's a air duct. This is a very fancy castle, so they have air ducts. And what happens is you get invited to the banquet, and you're talking to the queen, and the dog runs in and out of nowhere and runs all over the table because, you know, that's what he does. And the queen is quite upset at this. So basically sends your dog to like doggy prison or something, and they're gonna end up cooking your dog. But your dog escapes because he's diligent. But we can break that by just running down. And this is Chess Knight. He can cause some issues if he decides to not get hit, or I guess you could technically crit him for very, very low as well. But yeah, there's a setup there that we have to attack upwards, and it'll keep him in position as long as you actually hit him and don't crit him for very, very low damage. And the reason I activated wings there, even though it said it didn't work, it causes the enemies in the game to not be able to detect us. And since those sniffs can cause a lot of problems, it's just you know, fortunate that the wings happen to do that. So otherwise they'll block us like crazy, and you know, it's a big mess that we don't want. And here we're in the dark forest, or dark maze, which is basically a giant series of rooms that look exactly alike. Since we know where to go, we don't really need any guidance or anything, but typically if you were to play through casually and you weren't sure where to go, there's these like owl guys up in the top, or in the trees, and they'll basically guide you as to what direction you should be heading in. And I think there's maybe like 1 or 2 screens that they don't actually spawn on, but for the most part, if you're on the wrong track, the room won't have one of them like anywhere. So they might be at the bottom of the screen, they might be at the top of the screen, but you'll see them in the trees somewhere. And we're basically making our way to the next boss, who is well, I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of like a Zelda character, or an antagonist of Zelda. Here we go, we have summoned Dark Link. Who just so happens to have very, very good evasion, apparently. I don't think I've ever seen that many misses in once, but yeah, he gives us the spear, which, I mean, the sword, which we do not need. I should mention in all of Evermore, all the spears move the fastest, and also moving left and the reason I'm moving left and right is it's much faster to move sideways or left to right with the boy than it is to move just straight up or down. So we want to try to zigzag basically throughout the run anytime that we're moving on a vertical platform. And the reason we sprint is because the perfect sprint, or technically fastest way to move, would be something. It's like you press on one frame, then you let go for two or three or four frame. Oh, you let go for the third frame, and then you repress on the fourth frame. Which you want to try to emulate as well as possible, but you know, of course, it's not really that easy to do unless you're TAS. So that was Timber. He's the first of the series of dragons that we fight here, or see here. And this is the sewers. This is a truly evil section in the game. You got these blob guys who block you and have the chance of dropping something, which block you further. And you have these rat guys that will block you and get stuck. And your only alternative is to kill them. So you want to hope that none of that happens, but unfortunately there is a very likely chance it will happen. Which seems like we got lucky this time. Nice. Oh, that's pretty good. This section can also be a little bit frustrating because you have two raptors that spawn on the screen, as well as a futuristic robot guy that somehow made its way to the medieval end times. The raptors have a huge evasion rate. The robot has a tendency to dodge as well. Oh. So here we have probably the most peaceful and one of the best soundtracks or tracks in the game, in my opinion. It's shortly lived, but quite enjoyable. We're just navigating our way to another castle right now, where we will fight the second boss, or the second boss that requires Crush, I should say, rather. And the last boss that we need to fight with casting spells. This is Verminator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. So he should almost certainly die. So I did a little bit of extra cast just to make sure that he could die. Yeah, so you can skip Verminator. Oh yeah, and when you defeat him, he explodes, even though he's a giant rat, because this is Evermore and everything likes to explode. And he also just happened to have a bazooka on him as well. You can skip Verminator, but it will cause soft locks sometimes. There isn't a known way to make it consistent yet. Is he a robot? Actually, that's a good theory. Maybe all the bosses are just actually giant robots. But in all bosses, obviously, we need to fight Verminator anyways, because he's a boss. But As for Verminator skip, there's a few theories as to what causes it and what makes it work. I guess the general consensus that if you have a 2-chip SNES, well, one is we discovered recently that putting the game audio to stereo for some reason makes it a lot more consistent. And then also just depending on what version of SNES you have. So like a Famicom is a lot less likely. Hello? A lot less likely to soft lock on Verminator with stereo activated. The issue is, I guess, the sound issue. Because what happens is the sound will go berserk when you're re-entering the prisons, and it's believed that what's going on is it's overlapping the sound from the previous screen because it didn't get to load another screen yet. And with all the sound going on at once, it causes the game to soft lock. So once you try to leave the prisons, the game will freeze and, well, rather more or less a hard lock. The sound will die out entirely, and then it'll go black once you leave the screen, and it won't transition to the next screen. So we're talking to Tinker right now. He's a genius. He's showing us our telescope, and you know, we can just so happen to hear what's going on through the telescope as well as see. That's pretty awesome. He's gonna offer us ingredients and, you know, save, but we don't need any of that. We do need this axe, however, which is green. Fortunately, it is not green when we use it, though. To world's only stereoscope. So these stairs are super difficult. Sometimes you get stuck on them. So we're gonna backtrack through the sewers now, but thankfully we have this trusty green/golden axe, which allows us to break through these barriers here, which also explode. Because, you know, Evermore is kind of like an action movie. Uh-oh, dog's getting hit. And we're just trying to make our way to the next boss. I meant that wrong. And this section has a lot going on. You can get really bad RNG, or you can get pretty awesome RNG, depending. You want to have the dog follow you, because you need him to go up this very primitive elevator. So killing these guys would be ideal. So they'll knock the dog back and kill him. As seen there. And then we're riding the elevator all the way to the top. Or we're really fast at taking stairs, I'm not really sure. And incoming Starling. So since we got some extra call beads, we can cast Hypnotize, which makes this fight a lot more safe. We can just hit him back and knock him off the ledge and he won't attack us. Otherwise, what happens is he has the opportunity to grab us and he'll throw us down a bit, and then we have to run all the way back up to fight him some more. So let's say we hit him 3 times and he only needed 1 more hit of damage to kill. If he threw us down and we came up and attacked him immediately while he was only 1 hit away and killed him, it would cause the game to soft lock. He'd be sitting down still and he would not move anywhere. It's not just a little explosion, it's a massive explosion. You gotta remember, we got to Evermore via an explosion, so So, that was Tinker's brother. He asked us kindly to stop fighting his dragon, so we did. And conveniently, he gave us a ride over to the other castle, where we're going to talk to the evil queen. Or actually get captured by this guard here. You're coming with me. Really, really slowly. You know, since we're his prisoner, we're going to just casually follow him. Not like he's in a rush anywhere himself. Kind of walked up to us casually when he tried to capture us. Said stop, and we did. So we're a good boy, so we listened. So, she's like, how could you betray me questing for glory too? You opened up the passageway. Now I need you to close the drawbridge. So can you go do that for me? Alright, come to my back room. And you'll be able to close it there. Haha, just kidding, I got you now. So, she summons her little minions on us. Oh, look at that crit. That was a good pattern though. These guys can go in a few ways, and them going up next to each other is the best ultimately, because it'll allow me to kill them both in one hit. Unless if I crit it like that, of course. So, incoming fat joke. Indeed. Come a little bit closer. Meant to do that. So she somehow managed to get Mongola in her back room and tried to sick him on us, but you know, we're smart. We're better than that. We're really strong. So. And here is the biggest instance of cutscene RNG in the entire game. And what can happen is any given character can walk up and around to lose you some time. But you know, everybody was good and just went the way they were supposed to go. Now the castle's exploding, so we're gonna just run away real quick. Oh, look, the castle's not exploding anymore. He had one job. Man, everybody was really banking for the poor RNG. I'm actually really surprised it gave me good RNG there, to be quite honest. Yeah, you must be, this must have been quite heavy to have caused the entire castle to explode. So we want to keep the dog sniffing there, because these rats actually have the chance to plague him, which will be really bad for us. We don't want to have him sniff here, because when you come up these stairs, we need to wait for the dog to catch up to continue to go up the stairs. And we're working our way back to Tinker, the man of many wonders. See what he's got in store for us this time. And oh, what is this? Just so happens to have a new invention. And it's a flying machine made out of a barrel, a giant, a giant stone wheel, and a stove. I don't know how it works, but you know, we're gonna trust it. So this is Evermore, so weird things happen anyways. So he's telling us that we basically need to go acquire these items so that he can build us a rocket ship. So he's a genius, so he can do stuff like that. And basically what the rocket ship is going to do is it's going to allow us to go back into, well, rather than to modern times, futuristic times rather, and make our way back to Podunk. So we're gonna have to first get the diamond eyes back, because Tiny stole him from or Evil Horus rather stole him from us earlier. So we're gonna have to navigate our way back to Tiny's lair. Conveniently, we have this. I forgot what I was doing. Oops. Conveniently, we have this glider, which allows us to not only just move all over, the map or Evermore, but we can actually travel back in time or into different acts as well. So we're gonna go pay Tiny a visit now. And this is gonna be one of the first instances where, oh, whoops, well, that's not convenient. This is gonna be one of the first instances where the wings is actually gonna be an important role, and why we had to grab the extra wings. Because when in the lair, you want to be able to leave immediately, and if you use a wings right at the, well, I guess I'll just explain it once I do it. Makes more sense. It would have been best to, I guess, wait for the dog to be up close. So here we need to activate these, and we want to lift this rock as well. So, oh. I forgot. Yeah, you want to stand on all three of the platforms. So he's gonna start throwing these oblings at us, but we're just gonna, make our way to him, taunt him. Even though he's the strongest man in the world, supposedly, we can, he still needs minions to do his dirty work for him. So he's gonna ask us to leave him alone, so we're gonna do that, because we're nice. And now, instead of, normally what we would have to do here is wait for him to make his way all the way back around. But instead, we can just activate the wings there and leave immediately. This gives us a short time frame to do so. Then we want to work our way back over to the Skywalker. We don't need the bridge or the lift anymore because we're not going to be using it anymore. So we can just have the dog jump right across. And here we are. It's best to kind of just walk up a little bit so you can position the dog to get to the Skywalker a little faster. I'll go to this one first. And we're going to acquire the wheel now, as well as killing the, well, actually third to last boss, sorry. Cleopatra, or Cleopatra actually. I always thought it was Cleopatra because I didn't read the name right. It's spelled like it, spelled similar. But want to work our way back to Thrax's lair because this boss just so happens to be hiding the wheel for whatever reason. We don't know why, but weirder things have happened, such as Verminator having a bazooka on his possession, so we don't question it. Just do what we gotta do. We can skip these as we would in the beginning of the run. You can either choose to just kill that maggot or to despawn him really quickly. And unfortunately, at least to mine or I don't think anyone else's knowledge, oh, I let the maggot get a little too far down. Die. There's no way to do like an intro skip on this guy, so you kind of have to just run up and initiate the intro cutscene. So that's what had happened earlier with Thrax. Except Thrax disposes a bunch of maggots on the screen as well, which causes a bunch of lag additionally. So you want to hopefully get caught by the ribs here. Like so. I believe it has to do with the positioning of the boy. Cast 2 spells on me. That's unfortunate, but not bad. And this is Thrax V2 right here. And we indeed did get Best Doggo back. Well, actually, I guess it's questionable. Because Toaster Dog is, you know, definitely a crowd favorite, I would say. We want to be the boy here because, oh, well, I forgot to switch, or to move up and then switch, rather. Want to be the boy there because he's going to move much faster on horizontals. And we can be the dog, switch back to the boy. Yeah, keep the dog there. We need to make our way back to the Windwalker, or I think it's called the Windwalker, right? Yeah. And we're gonna make our way over to the other part of the not the bug mug, but the prehistoric section, just as we would with, in like any percent, we need to go and get the gauge. Which is the last instance of where we will need the wings. And the reason we needed the wings here is because we need the dog to follow us, and these raptors also have a tendency to block us. Which, actually, it's probably more convenient even then, because they attack you, they can still get in your way quite a bit. Oh man, that's a really bad pattern. So yeah. You do not want the raptors to block your way when you're going up there, if possible. Of course, you know, sometimes you just can't avoid it, but. And it was discovered recently that by my buddy Solar Cell 007 that you can actually loot the gauge there with the dog, and it's better because of how slow the dog walks when he's like in a cutscene or like an inactive animation, such as you going up a door or going through a door or something where he has to follow you, like on the tower where we fought Sterling. So you want to get the dog to go up first, since it'll take him a bit of time to catch up with the boy if you enter as the boy only. And here You know, we can just park our windwalker in the middle of the ocean, and yeah, we're back at Tinker's place, and we don't have to watch the cutscene of the Windwaker landing, so it's pretty convenient. Granted, we don't need it anymore, so who knows where it went. I guess it's stuck in the ocean, but it doesn't bother us. And now we're getting ready to take off and go into outer space. Now we're in Act 4. Where we get to see our best friend, Future Toaster Dog. Super cool. And yes, he can make waffles. Can't say what the quality of them is, though. Personally, they don't look very appetizing, if I were to be quite honest. Also, he can shoot laser beams out of his eyes. That's what they do in the future. Whew. So now we're going to be making our way to the secret boss. I can't remember which sloot it is. It's this one. I really should have, yeah, it is this one. Okay. So take your bets. Basically, to fight this final boss here, I need to hopefully get lucky and guess this code really, really fast. The code is completely random. It could be any combination of these three. Dang. Oh man, this is rather unfortunate. Wow. Oops. So that went rather slow. Oh! So you don't want to do that. Get in there. Oops. So you may have recognized this guy from somewhere in the past. For some reason, the guy from Act 2 just happened to be hiding here in, outer space. Act 4. And yay! He's been defeated. So now that we have defeated the secret boss, we can go and fight Carltron. Yeah, he does not have the most generous of rewards. So what we do here to enter this loot for the final part of the game is a input. On every other input, you can cause the dog or tell the dog to just enter the screen, even though you don't have complete full access. So normally you would have to go walk the boy around, get him in there, but dog has superpowers. And since the dog is super fast as well, we can just put him all the way up top right there. And there would normally be those fans would push you back when you try to run up there, but the dog is too fast for the fans, so he can drag the boy into the screen and you don't have to wait. Otherwise you have to kill the fans with these bombs that shoot out at you by hitting them up. And then yes, we have to fight some evil raptors. They're not just any ordinary raptors, they are metal raptors, the worst kind. But we're actually doing pretty good here. Getting some good RNG. So that's going to be the last set of raptors, and then we have to fight another boss that we saw previously, the Rimsillas. They're not just any type of Rimsillas, they are the metal, silver, and blue Rimsillas. Because in the future everything is just made out of metal, including your dog. We actually got really good RNG there. Oh yeah, kill this guy. You can't let the Roomba live there. So, rest in peace, Roomba. The only thing that's not made out of metal here is the evil you. Or maybe he was made out of metal the whole time. It's hard to say. And then the evil toaster dog, who is truly evil. He is probably the hardest thing in this game to hit, but actually did pretty well there. So we're gonna fight second to last bad guy. This is Metal Magmar. There's a lot of HP, but we're more powerful than that, so he's not going anywhere. And then Carltron's evil robot. His explosions can cause a lot of lag, so ideally we want to try to drag him to the left-hand corner. This way his explosions won't be on screen for the left, and time. I should have said time is coming up, sorry. But he has there's two things that can happen there. He can jump or you can dodge. Or, you can miss or crit. So I want to try to hit him as much as possible. And that's Evermore. Thank you guys for having me. Now we're making our way back to Podunk. Evil Professor came to his senses after you just had to defeat his super evil robot. thank you everybody for watching and tuning into RPG Limit Break. Thank you, High Spirits, for having me, and everyone else as well. I'd like to say good luck to the rest of the runners. Fortunately, missed out on a lot of great dialogue. Oh yeah, and everything starts exploding in Evermore now. Yeah, the soft lock was certainly new. Gonna have to. Hopefully, eventually, we'll make a list of all the possible soft locks. But that's a new one to add to the book for sure. Yeah, I went to save in the inn in the very beginning of the game, and the game soft locked. And yeah, incoming Michael Bay movie. Alright, well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We are going to be watching some I don't know who's next. I'd like to say good luck to him though. Oh, Dragon Arc SDA with some Legacy of the Wizard, so make sure you tune in for that. And have a wonderful night, everybody.